Born in 1926.
In the lovely month of June.
At a hospital?
Yes, at a hospital, as opposed to my husband, who was born in a bedroom at his home. Born in a hospital, and I lived for 4 years on Manhattan in Buffalo, New York, 32 I think it was, Manhattan. And then along came Betty Lou. I had a sister, and so we moved to a bigger house at 210 Hamlin Road, and that was my home from when I was 4 years old until I moved away when I was married. And had a very nice childhood there. It was a nice street. We were right next to Humboldt Parkway, so it was a big treed parkway, and had a 3-car garage and a porte-cochere, I have to say that. And
A pet?
And for the first 8 years of my life, there was, in my life, Udo, who was a German Shepherd. And we have a very nice picture that was taken when I was about 4 of me sitting on him like you would sit on a horse, sort of. And so that was that life. I had a friend down the street. Her name was Jean Rappold, who I used to play in, when you're 7, 8, and 9, those years, play Monopoly with. That was a big treat to go down to her house at night after supper and play Monopoly. And we did we had a brick siding to our house so that we'd throw the ball up there and play Oliver Twist and other
Can't do this.
Can't do this, can't do that. Underneath and something. So we did that. And then during these grammar school years, I went to school 74, from kindergarten to 8th grade. And then during those years also I went to Cora Tapson's School of Dance, where I took tap and acrobatic, and I think one year I took toe dancing. And this is where I learned my part of my repertoire that I use at parties, which was down on the east side of Toity Toyd and Toyd. And then I could break into a tap, and I can still do this in anybody's kitchen anytime. So.
And on the acrobatic side, you learned the bunny pose.
Oh, I learned the bunny pose, and I could take my feet, bring them up over my back and over my shoulders, laying on my chest, and put them on the ground. That was being agile, I would say. And Cora Tapson had like shows at the end of the year, and we went even to Kleinhand's Music Hall and had her put on the end of the year shows. So those were, and then always from the time I was born until I was 16, there was a place, my folks had a cottage out on Lake Erie, on a piece of ground called the Hoover Grounds, where everybody rented the land but had their own house, and we were 4 doors from the Alhambra. And this was very pleasant summers, where you were right on Lake Erie, and you didn't have a lot of friends there. Just a couple doors away was of someone named Jimmy Felger, and so he and I, because there was nobody else there, we became friends and did swimming together and had bonfires together and went down to the creek and fished together. And
you had a lot of guests out to the...
Every weekend, people came to, they would bring their own like lunch or supper, and then after that there would be evening card games. And this was always, the weekends were busy. The middle of the week was quiet. And you had no running water. We didn't have an inside toilet. And you had to go down to a pump about 12 houses down to get your water that you were going to use. You had to warm it then if you wanted hot water. You went to the bathroom in the outhouse, and then you came in. My mother had a little basin on the table there. This is where you rinsed your hands when you came in from the outhouse. My mother, I can see her washing in big tubs in the back end of the house there. And those were summers. But then got into the war years, 1940 something or other war years, then gas was rationed and people didn't come out much. And by this time now I was 16 and I wanted to get a job, summer job, and so the place was sold. My mother wasn't too happy there. It was too quiet for her then, and she didn't drive, so she was really just kind of fastened to the place when she got there.
Never learned to drive.
Never learned to drive, no. And So those were the beach years, and then we would go down to the Alhambra, which was a big casino-like place. They had plays there, and Jimmy and I would stand on a porch they had there, and we could peek in and we would watch the plays. And then during intermission, we'd look around and see where there were empty seats, and then during intermission we'd sneak in and we'd sit in these empty seats. So then we move on from, now I'm in 8th grade. I'll go back to graduating from 74, 8th grade. And now my folks decided I was going to go to St. Mary's Seminary. I thought I could go to Easter Maston where all my friends were going. No, I was going to go to St. Mary's Seminary. Didn't want to at the time, but in retrospect it was very nice that I went there. And so I had to take a streetcar or a bus to school every day, and walk up to Ferry and catch the streetcar and go to school. And there, this was taught by the nuns of St. Mary of Namur. And this is the group. There were 17 in my class, and my group then was a group of 6. And we were like our little group. We were, at one point in time, we were taking something Latin that sounded like sooty footy puts. And that's what we called ourselves, the sooty footy puts. But we didn't wear a uniform, but we had to wear stockings. And
Even during the war years?
even during the war years. And we were always complaining because we would catch them on the chairs. We sat at chairs and tables. And you'd catch them on the stairs. I don't know, maybe they relaxed that for a while about stockings. I'm not sure anymore. But anyway, this was with, I'll name my 6 friends who were my very good friends. It was Mary Bone, who remained my good friend up until about a year ago when she died. And Rosalind and Arlene and Charlotte and Phyllis and me. So that was 6. So then those were very nice high school years. We did a lot of roller skating, Mary and Charlotte and I. This was our place to like go meet boys, because it's an all-girls school. So we'd go to the roller rink, Skateland, which was on Main Street in Buffalo, and this was our big outlet for entertainment.
Friday, Saturday night?
Friday, Saturday night, right. And so that was that. Then I graduated from high school in 1944, and we had a very beautiful graduation. You wore long white gowns, and you had someone that was in like first grade, and she was your page. And so the graduation picture then is you on the front lawn in your long white gown with your little page in her long white gown. And so then it came time to choose a college, and I'm not very adventurous and didn't want to move too far, so I decided to go to Duville, which was right in town. I could live at home and go to college at the same time. And Phyllis, one of my good friends, she also went to Duville, so we went off to Duville together. And there was another 4 years of...
Now, you were the first in your family to go to college, too, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was Grandpa...
No, Grandpa had maybe 5th grade or something. Grandma, I think, did 9th grade, went up, got as far as 9th grade. And so this was, but I know I went to the seminary because my father's business partner, his daughter went to the seminary, and so that was like, you got to do what the
Keep up with the
partner
partners.
does, keep up with the Joneses, sort of. So that was that, and then at Duville, I think Daddy went into this story a little bit. This is where on October 15th...
You're the correct side, though.
Yeah, this is my side of the story. October 15th, 1947 was the date where I had this... Jean Rappold had called and asked if I would go out. And yes, but I hadn't seen Jean all my high school years. She was going to another high school. I didn't see Jean much at all. This was kind of a bolt out of the blue that Jean is calling me, but as it turns out, it was a good move. And so we went, so she asked me if I'd go out with this. His name was Rudy Schneider, and as he had mentioned, wear flats because he's not real tall. So I went to the night before, I went to a church dance with my friend Mary Bone, and I'm telling her about this date I'm going to have, and his name is Rudy. We kind of laughed, and I'm going to say, "Don't be rude, Rude," and that was that. So then we did have this date. I went down to Jean's house, and they came, and then we went to this football rally. Well, I don't know a soul. I haven't talked to Jean more than 2 times in 4 years. And I'm supposed to be all like clubby with everybody. I was kind of lost.
Never been to a football game or rally.
Never been to a football game in my life. And it was just, and this is out at University of Buffalo, and I'm just kind of floored by it all. And obviously didn't act too, I don't know, didn't fit in with the crowd real well. And so anyway, then we went to this place afterwards, and so I had one drink and told a joke, and then Daddy thought, well,
She can tell
she's got a
jokes.
sense of humor, and maybe she'll be all right. So he asked me to go to a football game the next day again. I mean, to go to a football game the next day. And so we went, and what do I know about football games? I'm all bundled up, and, football games, you see scarves and mittens and everything.
Raccoon coats.
I go to this football game. We're sitting on the sunny side of the stadium. I thought I was going to die from the heat.
Now, is this also when he came up to the house and used...
I was just going to bring that up. And the first day, when he came that Saturday to take me to the dance, it was a very lovely day. So he walks in the yard. My mother and I were out under the porte-cochere, I guess, waiting for him. And so he walks up the yard and he says, "Isn't this weather phenomenal?" Well, now, in our family, phenomenal was a big word. So the next day, or later that night, my mother and I, wow, phenomenal. Ooh, you can tell he's a college
boy.
guy. So we carried that along all these years yet. Then what else? Then then we went, and then he asked me the football game the next day. And as Daddy said, it just seemed to happen that we met and we were together, and we went out that week again, maybe 2 times, and then it just got to, you just assumed that this was going to be your life partner, I guess. And then by that following April, I got a ring.
Wow.
And I can tell you how I got the ring.
How did you get the ring?
I was working in a downtown department store in what they called the tube room, because this is where all the money got sent through tubes, and you sat at a, I don't know, table of some kind where the tubes came down. And so this was my job. Mary Bone and I had this job in the tube room. And so Daddy says one night, well, he would pick me up on a Thursday night, the night the stores were open. Well, this was kind of funny because we didn't go out on Thursday nights usually. We were both in school, and it was not like a date night. Well, fine. And so then he picks me up and he says, well, let's go over to the Statler and have a drink. Statler Hotel, which was like big fancy. Again, but all right.
He's a college boy.
He's a college boy. So we're there, we're having a drink, and then I go to the ladies' room. And when I come back from the ladies' room, the little cocktail napkin that you get with your drink is kind of peaked up to look like a little tent. And so Daddy says then, let's see who can blow that napkin over first. So we're both blowing on this. And of course, Daddy, I don't think was blowing too hard. He let me blow it over. And what was under that little napkin? A ring box. And inside the ring box was my engagement ring. So that's how we became engaged. And that was April 15th, 1948, I'm going to say. We met in 47, right? 48. So then Daddy still had one more year of school. I was going to graduate that year, but Daddy didn't want to get married till he was finished with school. So I got a job then after I graduated.
You had your degree in commerce?
Bachelor of Science in Business with education. So I could have gone out and taught high school. I just didn't want to tangle with that age kid, though. So I just looked for a job in the business world and got my job then at the Department of Social Welfare, Erie County Department of Social Welfare on Pearl Street in Buffalo. And so I worked there. I didn't wear my engagement ring because I was afraid they wouldn't hire me if I was engaged. So after I was there about a month or 2, I finally just put the ring on and went in.
Did you drive there every day or take the
I took the
bus?
streetcar. Well, it was streetcar, and then they moved over to buses. So for a while it was streetcar, and then it was buses. And so we had this engagement, and then it was Daddy graduated in June of 49, and we had set September 10th as our wedding date of 1949. And then Daddy got his job with the New York Telephone Company, and he was gone that summer. He graduated in June, and he went down and he lived at the McCarthy's in one room from when he graduated until we were married. And then we went down. They gave us several rooms where we had a bedroom and a sitting room, and this was our
This was your
home.
first time now cooking. And
Cooking, right, and not thoroughly cooking chicken when I would serve it. And the other kitchen-y thing that comes up is Grandma and Grandpa Schneider came down to visit us at one time, and they were gonna like make it nice for Daddy because they're gonna make potato pancakes, which Daddy loved. And what did I know about potato pancakes? I never made them. And so we were allowed to use the kitchen. When McCarthy's were finished cooking, they would call upstairs and say, "We're finished." And it was our turn to come down and use the kitchen. So then we would go down. Well, now we went down and, Grandpa Schneider made the potato pancakes. Well, making potato pancakes, you put them in a lot of hot grease and they become smoky, and it's just not the kind of thing I wanted to have happen in McCarthy's house. They have all this
smoke billowing the.
smoke-filled kitchen, greasy filled kitchen. But that went, and then when we went home for Christmas, that was when my father asked Daddy if he would join the brewery, and my father owned a brewery in Hornell, and this was.
So December 40th.
He had no sons, and this was now he went, and Daddy said he would. So.
Now you had been down to Hornell when you were a kid because you had the brewery down there a couple
I
times.
hadn't been down there much. I had gone once when I was 14. My mother had a ruptured appendix, and this was on a Monday that this turned up, that she's not feeling very good, and she's laying on the couch at the beach. And she says to me at 14, would I wash the glasses? I can't even say it with a straight face now. Wash the glasses and sweep the kitchen and sweep the floor. And so I say, all the glasses, the whole floor. Wasn't I good? I had nerve to ever holler at my girls.
And of course,
she's laying on the couch groaning and moaning, and then. But then she had to be taken to the hospital, and she had a ruptured appendix, as it turns out, and so she was going to be laid up for a while. So my Aunt Anna was living in Hornell, Aunt Anna and Uncle Art, and so we went down and stayed with them, Betty Lou and I, for I don't know what period of time, maybe 2 weeks or something, until Mother was able to come home. So that was my only association with Hornell until we were now married and we moved there. And so we had a place in 10 Collier Street in Hornell. That was our first place. It was furnished. And we stayed there from like January till May, when we bought a house on Cleveland Avenue out in the rural. Talk about sticks. We had cows that used to graze across the street. And so anyway, we had that house. We lived there 7 years, and we had Mark when we were there. And Mark was born May 7th, 1955. May 9th, 1955. You didn't correct me. And
St. James.
we thought, we were gonna. I thought you got married and you had a family, and so, but it didn't work that way. After about 3 years, I had gone to doctors in Hornell, and they could do nothing. And then I went to a doctor up in Buffalo, Dr. LaForge. And with all the things he did for me then and all, I became pregnant. And so, as I say, it was 5 years after we were married that Mark came along.
A little bit about the Hornell, living at 333. Now, that was the first television you got, was it?
Oh, that was, of course, Daddy is always, there's something new electronic on the market, I gotta have it. And so we were one of the first ones to have a television up our area. And you had an antenna that was put on the roof and lowered to the eaves or whatever with guy wires. And so you had a windy day and the guy wires would sing, and it would be to the point where it kind of unstrung you after a while.
And all of this was for how many channels?
I think one. We had Channel 4 out of Buffalo. And I remember one time there was going to be some fight, and I don't know who was fighting. Some, big fighters of the day.
Wrestling.
And so then Daddy had invited, he was on a business trip. But he had invited these men to come over. He would be home, right around the time they would be. Maybe the fight was going to be 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock even, who knows. But anyway, the men have started to arrive and Daddy isn't there yet. And finally, Daddy comes home and you put this TV on to catch this fight. Well, there was more snow and yet all these men congregated here to watch this fight, and I don't know how much of it they ever did see because of the way the signal came in that particular night. And 333, it was my first house, and that was nice. We did a lot with the lawn. We enjoyed having the yard, and we had a garden. I had never had a garden any other time, but we put tomato plants in, sometimes overdone with chicken for fertilizer, but
Your first barbecue, your
first barbecue, and first a lot of firsts happened there. That was
washing machines and stuff like
first
that.
the wash machine.
Grandma never had one, or she was.
Not at that point in time, no. And I had then when I was expecting Karen, well, at that house, we got a portable dishwasher. Had a nice next door neighbor, nice next door neighbors on both sides. Doris Pitkowitz, both where we would hang our laundry out was both near the mutual fence we had, and so you hung your wash out. You'd be out there an hour and a half, sometimes chatting with your neighbor as you hung the wash out. Also in here, since we didn't have any children for a while, we got a dog, our first dog. We had a little blonde cocker that didn't live too long, got hit out on the road. Then we got a black cocker, named him Jet. This lady said Daddy went out to get this dog, and we wanted, we'd seen red ones now, or copper-colored ones, and that's the color we wanted. Well, this lady didn't have copper-colored Cocker Spaniels, so she said, all I have is black, she said, and you can take it home, and if you don't like it, you can bring it back. You bring this little black puffball home. I had a pillow waiting there and a red toy. Put it on the white pillow and the red toy, and then you say, no, I don't like it, take it back. So we had Jet then, as it turns out, for 12 years. Where am I now? I'm on 333.
And Karen's about to be born now.
Now we got another. Had to go back to the doctor again to get this everything, all my insides straightened out, and then Karen came, and
the house was looking a little smaller at that time.
Well, now there was no bedroom actually. Well, I guess there would have been, but anyway, now we decided we're going to move up into something bigger. So we looked or shopped around for houses, and the house that we liked, that was the best one for us, we thought, was 444. So we moved from 333 to 444, just down the street. And well, this was dream house for us. Now this was a very nice home, and it was our home then till we left it 50 years later. Although an addition was put on, but still it was our home. That was our address then, 444, for 50 years. And
rural at the time again.
Again, rural, all open up behind us, and then after a bit...
Corn and horses.
Yeah, horses. The first year, there were horses at the back fence. And then the next year, they planted corn. And I found that a little bit intimidating. The corn got so tall that, you walked out back and you felt kind of walled in. Well, that was only 1 year anyway. Then they decided they're going to build a school back there, the North Hornell Grammar School. So that was fine. I don't know, there were some objections to it, but it worked out fine for us because the school was, as you went out our back, it was enough to the right that you didn't look right at that, and what was behind us was just all cut grass with a playground. Could we have it any nicer for our children? And in the summer, they brought a girl in that was like playground director for the summer. So our kids would go over. There were games arranged, pet shows, whatever, and that's what our kids could do in the summertime. And as I say, the grass was all cut for what looked like an acre, or acres anyway, out back. And here again, this was a lovely house. We had a good life.
I met a lot of friends back. This was about the time, it was even back at 333 when you began to meet Ann Fiore, and your social group began
right.
too.
And I joined Newcomers Club when we went to Hornell. And through the efforts of Betty Hornbeck, she kind of talked me into it and came and picked me up. And this is where I met then Ann Fiore, who is still to this day like my best friend. And so with her, Ann and Sal, and we became very good friends, did cards back and forth, just would take the kids and plop them on the bed so we could play our cards in the living room, and took a trip. One of the first things we did with them was took a trip to Cleveland to see a baseball game, and there were a lot of back
Bermuda?
I went to Bermuda with them, right? Did a lot of back and forthing with them. And
Now, is that where you also met Benzes and Fillmores?
well, that's right. They all came into the newcomers club, and from that, there was a home bureau group, and it was called Remaquin, which is newcomers spelled backwards. How about that? Isn't that clever? And so those were my friends. This group that was in the home bureau, they were all women that had been in the newcomers club, and now this was and we met, I don't know what it was anymore, once a month or once every 2 weeks or something. And so this was our social life, our social group. They were home bureau picnics and
Christmas parties.
Christmas parties, and I don't know what it all was, but we had a good life there, and I'm very happy living there. And now we're up to where?
You're in the new house now, and it's getting close to time for your younger kids were a little bit too old now to be fun.
Then we had, out of the blue, surprise, surprise, no doctor helping along or anything after 7 years after Karen. Well, kaplunk, here comes Frank. Surprise. And then a year and a half later, we had Mary.
Now, where was Frank born?
He was born, where was he born? Oh, okay. So Frank's story, the story of Frank's birth, is that my mother, Grandma Kilbert, had come down because I was getting close to my time, and she was going to be there to look after the other children when I went to the hospital. And what happened was Grandma Schneider, Daddy's mother, died rather unexpectedly. She had gone to the hospital because she had edema in her legs and was going to have this taken care of. Well, as it turns out, she died rather suddenly in the hospital. So Daddy was called from where he was up in Oswego, and he was taking some coursework there, and he then went from Oswego to Buffalo. So I called the doctor and said, could I go up for my mother-in-law's funeral? And I had been in the day before, and he said yes. He felt I could go to Buffalo and come back. And those days there was a train running between Buffalo and Hornell. So my mother, Mark, and Karen, and we went up on the train up to Buffalo for the wake. And so we're there, and I went to the funeral parlor that night, and I'm pregnant, and everybody's, oh boy, you're gonna make it? Oh sure, everything's fine. And well, as it turns out, the next morning, the day of the funeral, I wake up at about 7 o'clock, and I say to Daddy, this is gonna be a Buffalo baby. Yikes. I have no doctor, so I call my friend Mary Bone, who had had a baby within the year, and I say, do you think your doctor would take me on as a patient that I could to deliver this baby? So she called, and then her husband, who was a male nurse, Gene, he came over. Daddy now has to, he's an only child, he has to go to the funeral, and so he, with Mark and Karen then, go off to the funeral home and then the church. And Gene comes over to get me, and Gene, my mother, and I go to the hospital to have this baby. Everybody thinks he's my husband. And so I get to Sisters Hospital in Buffalo, and at maybe 12:30 or 1, I think it was, that Frank was born, and Daddy got there, I'd say a half an hour before he was born. So he buried his mother and had his son all within that morning. And so that was a very wintry day, and then we were up in Buffalo for a week or thereabouts. And just what comes to mind as I tell this story is now we're back at Grandma Kilbert's with this new baby, and I'm downstairs and I'm going to feed the baby, and Mark comes from, this is maybe 10 o'clock at night or something. Mark comes to the landing of Grandma's stairs there, and he says, the baby's crying and crying and crying. Mark says, I can't take it. to get used to it.
And I certainly was welcome for Mary then.
So then, the other story of Mark accepting new siblings was when I was expecting Mary. I was back at the sewing machine, and Mark came back to say something to me, which was in our bedroom, and I don't know how the conversation went, but this is where he found out that, yes, there was going to be another baby in the family. And so Mark goes down and goes into his room, and by the time I'm through with the sewing machine and I come down the hall, he's laying on his bed crying. And it was all just something that was disturbing to him, that there was going to be another baby in the family, and he couldn't explain it, and it was just one of those things you can't explain. But he got over it, and has been a wonderful brother to them. And
so trips back and forth to Buffalo. We used to go up to Buffalo a lot, I remember as a kid. That was staying with one grandma and then staying with another grandma.
It was always, you went up on a Saturday because Daddy would be working, so you went up on a Saturday. You were there for Saturday night supper. And then you would stay that Saturday night supper and that evening at the one family house. And then the next day after church, you would go over to the other family house and have Sunday dinner with that family. And then back home that night. Sometimes we'd stay long enough to watch Walt Disney thing, and then get home in time to watch, what was the John Daly? What's My Line?
Right.
Get home in time to watch that. And so those days we went back and forth to Buffalo quite a bit, I will say, with the two children. They would always get their pajamas on when we were coming home and have to lay in the back end of the station wagon.
And with Frank as a young baby, we didn't make it quite home once for...
Oh, that story. Well, one time it was, I think, the month of February, and we were up in Buffalo, and we're coming home. It's February, it's a kind of a snowy, blowy night, and we get to Pavilion, and there's a man standing at the big signal at the intersection in Pavilion, and he says, "You can't go any further, you can't go up that hill." And, well, I'm now 4 or 5 months pregnant with Frank. We have Karen, who was about 7, Mark, who was about 10. And so he says, "You can go over to the fire hall there. They're just closing down from an anniversary party they were having there. But you can go up, and I'm sure they'd accept you in, and that's where they're sending people to lay down and spend the night." So we go over there, and, well, you look around, it is picking up, and everything's kind of thinning out, but there's some people around that have been stopped by the trooper and sent over there. And so we set, I don't know what we had to set up or what kind of blanket we had to lay. No, we had Frank.
Yes.
I was pregnant with Mary at this point in time. We had Frank because we had a baby. And so we had this blanket to lay down, and so you're just kind of arranging, and you're going to be like spending the night here. And this nice person comes over, this man, and says, "I live across the street. My name is Lloyd Akins." Aiken, like an ache, oh my aching back. He says, "I live across the street," and I say, "You have a young child." He says, "Would you like to come over and stay at our house?" Well, Daddy and I look at each other, and all right, we think that would be better than the hard floor at this fire hall. So we follow him across, and my thought at the time is he's probably going to lead us right through the house and out back into the barn where he's going to slaughter us. But as it turns out, they were lovely people, Lloyd and Lila, and they took in a couple other people, but they gave us a bedroom all to ourselves, and which had a little bathroom in it. No window, but a little bathroom. And we slept with Frank in the bed, and I don't know quite where Mark and Karen laid, on the floor probably. And we were there 2 nights while this storm abated until they could get the roads cleared. And she was so nice. She made pies. They went down, they got milk because we had a baby. We played cards with them and listened to the radio a lot to get the feeling of how this was all being cleared. And by the time we left, it was a bright sunny day, and we came to the crest of this hill, and there was this big embankment on one side. It was just all windswept on the other. So it was like, the other side of that hill, it wasn't bad at all, but it had been bad. And certainly we heard of people who did die in that storm because they didn't stop, that, had to sit in their cars and then froze to death. So we did the right thing, and we had a baby, and I was pregnant and all that kind of stuff. So, all stuff like that there.
So the years with all the kids growing up around the house, kind of moving from kind of a smaller table to a bigger table, and there were 6 of us, and typical evening dinners, there was always a meat and a potato and a vegetable. And
Well, I like to think so. That's very nice that you bring that up. That was my job. I was a wife and mother, and I never did work after I got married, work outside the home, shall I say. And
But you volunteered. You had campfire girls, Girl Scouts?
a Boy Scout. I took the Boy Scouts on, and between the 2 of us, we did teach religion classes, and Daddy did most of that, but he would be gone sometimes, and I'd have to take over the class.
With those high school students you liked.
We were both on boards at St. Anne's, active in our church, and then I became campfire leader for Karen, and this is something lasted 7 years, I think, that took them on as maybe 2nd graders, I think, and worked with this group of the girls in her class were my campfire girls. And then Mary said the first day that we were going there, she said, now, when we have the meeting, she says, what should I call you, Mommy or Mrs. Schneider? And I said, well, you just have to call what you think you should call me at the time. So when we got to the meeting, she says, I'm going to call you Mommy. But I had fun with these girls. It was nice. It just put me on. I had to keep thinking of what we were going to do. We took them all to Niagara Falls, stayed overnight at my mother's in Buffalo, and took them to different area places that were of interest, and made how many projects of little knick-knacky things.
Are my feet wet? And that was Cub Scouts, or what was?
Well, that was just out by the back fence.
Oh.
That was one of the locker boys walking by, and I don't know, it must have been Soupy on the other side of the fence, and his remark as he calls over to me was, boy, are my feet wet. And that's another one of those things that we've lived with in the family.
Now, over the years, you also had a number of fresh air kids, too. That started back in 333?
Yes, we had our first visit. We decided we would take some children from New York, a part of the fresh air program, and we had 2 sisters, don't remember their names anymore. But they come from New York City, and they come, and you have them for 2 weeks. And you feed them and do whatever you can to entertain them. So it's a period of, well, we're going to go to Stony Brook today, and we're going to go to Buffalo over the weekend. We'll see Niagara Falls, and you just try to show them a good time, and country living and fresh air and all that. And then we had 3 boys, 3 different boys. I won't go through all their names, but the last one we had, we said we'd take 2. We'd take some brothers or something. Well, they sent us twins. Their names escape me now, too. 2 names that began with M, anyway.
Maldonado.
That was their last name, Maldonado. What were the boys' names?
Oh.
But anyway, because we had twins, somebody else that was taking children into the program also had gotten twins, twin girls. So the Hornell newspaper reporter came to our house and had the kids go out and stand by the swing set of the playground, and took their picture and had a story in the newspaper about them. And so we had them 2 years in a row, and they fit into the neighborhood with the neighborhood boys so well. This was like, what a breeze, because they had the baseball games out back, and to the point where they had a party for them at the end, and the kids were bringing cakes and lunch stuff and everything, and it was just, they were fun to have. And then we had some of the other little ones. The first one we had, they all had to write a card to their parents, like after they were there for a while, and he wrote on his card, "We can play on the grass." Well, this said to me, this is what this program's all about. There's no "do not walk on the grass" signs here. They got fields and lots of open spaces to play in.
You had a foreign or somebody from London stay with.
Oh, now that was worked through the BOCE program, where you could have an exchange student. So we offered to do that, and one year we got Sarah, and they're both from the town of Blackpool, is that it?
Sure, yeah.
Blackpool. And then what was the boy's name with an A? We just saw him.
Andrew.
Andrew Moss. I still correspond with his mother.
How many years later now?
How many years later? He was 16 and he's like your age now, right? And anyway.
So vacations were also kind of a big part of the family life growing up. They started off with a lot of Florida vacations early on.
Early on, from about when you were, and you are now, what, 47? And I think from when you were 3 months old or something similar. No, like, you were 5. That's maybe where it started. You were 5 years old. From then on, we always had a vacation in Florida. Either spring break time or Easter time, sometimes at Christmas. We always came down to Grandpa's house in Florida, in Miami. So this was always a very nice place to vacation. Always we'd come at a time of year where it was kind of cold up north and we'd come down to Florida. So in retirement then, we are now here at the Conquistador for 12 years. So we liked it so much we picked it for our retirement place to come half the year anyway, and the other half of the year we're up north where we're closer to some family. And
if the IRS is listening.
And the rest of the time the family comes and sees us down here, which is very nice. And we enjoy it. We like the warm weather and the nice bright blue sky and the sunshine and the flowers. Then I'll go back and I'll touch on other vacations. And we had 2 like that were biggie vacations, biggie family vacations. When we had all 4 children home, and Mark I think was 16, so everybody else will have to figure out all the other ages. We took a trip west in a travel trailer. And that was a big trip. We took, I think, 2 weeks to do it, would you say?
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks, and we went out to California. I'm not the geography student, and I'm going to tell you all the states we went through and all the stuff we did, but that was very pleasant and very nice. We played a lot of cards, we played a lot of games, that was nice, and we got out to, and went to Disney land out there. And then when Frank was 16, we did it again with a smaller unit. And
Mary has to figure out how old she is.
She'll have to figure out how old she was. And we went out to the West Coast again in a travel trailer. And very nice. And I think both times I drove, which was like, you know, driving a semi truck or something. But again, lots of cards, played lots of cards. I have written notes on all of those. Anybody wants them, why just check with me and I'll get you a copy. And other vacations, we never did get, my father always said he thought we'd get a cottage on one of the lakes. But that wasn't our thing. We always did something different every summer. Every summer we'd go someplace. And now it has resolved into, starting in 1983, we do family vacations. And it started out when Frank and Mary were in college. And we gathered as much family. We had 3 years at Eagle Bay. And now we just go someplace different every year, it seems. Up until this last year, we're going to double up on going to North Carolina 2 years in a row. But this is wonderful, and seeing as we take the group pictures, seeing the family grow in these pictures. So those, and we've always gone someplace different, all on the eastern seaboard, but Maine and New York State and North Carolina and Virginia, all different. Very nice, and just wonderful that the family all gets together. That's the best part of it. That's vacations. And then also, I'm going to touch on what else?
I think we can wrap it with vacations, because that does kind of bring us back to today. And where are we now? 2003 in April.
Easter Sunday, 2003. And Daddy and I are very happy in Daddy's retirement, and just love being here in Florida. I have a nice unit here. 3 years ago we moved from Hornell to Hatfield, where we have a very nice condo there. So we go back and forth, condo to condo, and
family to family,
enjoy life.
state to state.
Right. Okay. That's it.